Greetings fellow CarNut. Today you find us inside an MG4. And yes, we have driven an MG4 before, but we haven't driven this particular one because this one is green and it's the XPOWER. And it's something altogether different from the other MG4 I've reviewed. And you can check that review out up here. So if you're at all interested in what this very high performance MG4 is all about, sit down, buckle up and hang on tight. As I said in my earlier review of the MG4, I really quite like the car. I like its design, its funky angular lines, the fact that it's got the wheels pushed out to the extremities, front and rear, so it gives you a nice long wheelbase, lots of room inside. It's a narrow looking car, but actually doesn't feel particularly cramped inside. In fact, it's got quite a lot of space in here for occupants. Generally, it's got to be commended. It's a great effort by MG. And at the entry-level price that the car's range starts at, it's a really compelling option to have. This car is largely a lot like that one, so I'm not going to go into too much detail about the specifics of the MG4 as a model because we can see that on the other video. But this one has got a whole bunch of different attributes to it which make it somewhat more appealing. The first thing is it's got two motors. The original MG4 review I did, as in all other ones in the range, was rear-wheel drive, just the one motor on the rear axle. This one's got two motors, one on the front and one on the rear. Combined, they deliver 320 kilowatts, 150 up front, 170 out the back. So 320 kilowatts is a lot of power, and also 600 newton meters of torque. Big numbers for a vehicle that is, well, a smallish sort of family hatchback. It's not particularly lightweight though. It's 1800 kgs, so it's quite a hefty machine, largely of course due to its battery pack. But it still means that this vehicle can accelerate from 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in under 4 seconds. 3.8 seconds is the manufacturer's claimed acceleration time, and that's supercar quick. So apart from bolting an extra motor onto the front axle, what have they done to this XPOWER to lift it over and above the standard MG4? Well, with more power comes more responsibility, and that means bigger brakes. So yes, there's a bigger swept area on both front and rear discs, there's bigger calipers, but don't be fooled by those bright orange caliper covers. They are just covers. The calipers themselves are actually smaller than those covers suggest, although they are up in size from the regular rear-wheel drive MG4s. So bigger brakes, it's got stiffer anti-roll bars, front and rear. In fact, the whole suspension has been stiffened by 25%. It's got an electronic limited slip diff on the rear axle, and the car also has torque vectoring by braking, so it'll actually brake individual wheels to assist with cornering. Visually, there's not too much to differentiate this from other MG4. You have a different wheel design, different tyres, you have a different splitter arrangement on the lower front of the car and a different diffuser arrangement on the rear of the car. So there's a couple of visual clues that the car is different, but you have to be a bit of a train spotter, frankly, to tell it apart, unless you're driving this particular Hunter Green version, which is a matte green. It's an extra $1,000 on the base $64,990 price. But this colour is reserved exclusively for the XPOWER. You can get the XPOWER, of course, in other colours. Inside, again, the theme of not differentiating it too much from other MG4 continues. Velour on the centre parts of the seat, and you get some red stitching. But the seat profiles are the same, which is not a great thing, frankly, because they don't have a whole bunch of lateral support, so not really that well suited to a car that's going to be driven in a very spirited manner. It's got inductive phone charging, heated seats, heated steering wheel, 360-degree camera, which you really need because rear visibility on this vehicle is quite compromised. Those three headrests sticking up in my rear vision mirror make it very hard to see what's going on out the back, and parking maneuvers in this vehicle are quite challenging, so use those cameras. Nothing else really to say that you're sitting in the $65,000 top of the range XPOWER, so it would be nice if there's a little bit more theatre to the XPOWER, particularly on the inside. It comes fitted with a 64 kilowatt hour battery, and the WLTP quoted brochure figure for its range is 400 kilometres. Now, I've charged the car up fully, and I also picked up the car when it was fully charged, and it seems to be delivering a kind of a real world range of around about 350, 360 kilometres. It does have various drive modes, so you can customise the car's performance to suit, and again, that'll have an impact on the range you enjoy. It has one pedal driving, which is great. You know, I love one pedal driving. Problem is, it has to be initiated every single time you start the car. So let's just get this 0 to 100k nonsense out of the way, shall we? We're in sport mode, come to a stop, foot on the brake, foot on the throttle, wait till the power climbs to 66%, off the brake. And there's your 100. Yeah, a bit of wheel spin, but very impressive, very impressive. Sacrificed a little bit of range to do that, lost about 2 or 3% of battery power, but well worth it for the experimental nature of what we're doing here. Right, as you can see, the inductive charging tray is not actually up to the task of hanging on to your phone when you do that. So yeah, maybe that's a small revision that MG could make for us. The fact that there's no noise, and I like that, I like there's no artificializing of noise, there's no soundscape thing that you can tune up here and make it sound whooshy or whatever. You just hear the genuine effort of those motors. But the fact that it's so quiet, it takes a lot of the excitement out, it takes a lot of the drama out, it takes a lot of the kind of involvement that you get from an ICE vehicle out of the equation. And to my mind, you're missing something because of that. Some people don't mind that. Some people quite like the fact that it's quiet, fuss-free. But yeah, I think it's a little bit more sterile than you would get, obviously, in an ICE car. And I wonder if it might, over time, just reduce the affection you have for the vehicle, in that it delivers this astounding straight line acceleration performance, but there's no real there's no payback, I guess. Once you've taken a few friends for a ride and recorded their exclamations on your GoPro and them going, that's fun and entertaining, but as I say, it does get old after half a dozen times. So there's got to be other redeeming features of the XPOWER, I think, to warrant its price premium and its spec over and above a standard MG4. So let's go and explore what it can do on a windy road. We'll just see how the chassis handles these coming on for damp roads. Yeah, as I say, that roll-on performance is just great. I've got one pedal driving switched on, but I do have to use the actual brakes in these sorts of conditions. So the transition to the brakes is actually not as bad as some cars I've driven, some electric cars. You know, you come off the throttle onto the brakes and that first initial bite on the brakes is too severe, it's too sudden, it's unexpectedly harsh. This seems to have a much more moderated initial application of brake from the brake pedal, which is great. Of course, I could reduce the actual level of regenerative braking right down to almost nothing and have a much more ICE type feeling to the performance of the car coming off the throttle. I've left it kind of, I think, in a medium position, or maybe slightly higher than medium for regenerative braking, because I'm looking to get some of that power back into the battery. It's very tunable on the throttle. I think the fact that it's got that all-wheel drive chassis, those two motors working in tandem to push you along, it's really feeling quite secure coming out of corners. As I say, the roads are a bit damp now, so I've got to be a little bit gingerly with it. You've got to recalibrate your appreciation for speed because you don't have any sound and you don't have much in the way of feedback through the steering. The steering you can weight up according to what your driver settings are and which mode you're operating in, but you don't get any more feedback. You don't really know exactly what those wheels are doing. You can certainly feel a little bit of torque steer from the front axle, but yeah, you don't really get a whole bunch of knowledge about the adhesion you've got or what level of grip you're coming up against on the front tires or on the rear for that matter. So it's a little bit too insulated for a sporting driver, I think, to feel like they really could have a great deal of confidence in punting it quickly. But there's no denying the speed that it offers. That is phenomenal, and you can have a lot of fun with this car simply by choosing when you apply the throttle and how much. Going around corners, yeah, it's nicely settled. The suspension, as I say, is firmer than in the standard car, and I think that's well warranted, and it doesn't seem to suffer in terms of ride quality because of that. So I'm very impressed with generally how the whole thing steers and rides. This car has been compared often with traditional ICE hot hatches. I don't think it's up against Golf GTIs. I don't think it's up against Hyundai i30Ns or i20Ns or anything like that. I don't think it's up against any other internal combustion engine vehicle, because I think the people who are looking to buy an XPOWER, they want a battery electric vehicle. And you can question their reasoning for doing that, but that's their decision. They want to buy an electric vehicle. And if they want to buy an electric vehicle which has some spirited performance and some sporting ability, then this is definitely a serious contender, because it absolutely does have some sporting ability. Look, a lot of the traditional feedbacks that you enjoy with, say, a hot hatch aren't that satisfying in here. I've got to say, it's not a Golf or a i30N competitor. It's just not, because those cars, you know, if you've driven them, you know what I mean. They're kind of tactile, they feedback, they encourage you, they speak to you, they communicate. This car does a bit of that, but not enough to compare favourably with those cars. But as I say, I don't think this car is actually competing against those cars. I think this car is competing against maybe, you know, a Model 3 high performance or dual motor, and a couple of other electric cars that are starting to get big power. And I think the people who are buying this car will be incredibly satisfied with what they're getting, because the accelerative ability this thing has, not just from a standstill, but from any speed to any other speed, well, it's just shits and giggles funny. I've actually warmed to it. I didn't come to it, to be fair, with a lot of optimism and hope. I'm kind of a bit more traditional, I guess. I like my internal combustion engine vehicles. I like my hot hatches. I like, you know, subtle inputs and rewarding feedback from a car. And I knew I wasn't going to get that from this. But I tell you what, this car has really, really grown on me. It's just the character of the car. I think it's got a really funky, kind of fruity appeal. And this powertrain, that just adds to the appeal. I'm not known for having an open mind, but I have had my mind opened by this car. And I'm really impressed. I've got to say, I am really impressed.